Lion Sports Report. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus alongside. We have a phenomenal show for you this evening. Excited to be on hand, as always, on a Monday evening, and it's a Monday evening after a big Nittany Lion win. Tyler, 56-44 over Nebraska this weekend in front of a soggy, wet Beaver Stadium with 106,000 people in the stands, no less. So that is very, very impressive. But maybe more so, for the first time since the 1970s, Penn State undefeated at home in 2 consecutive seasons. And you think about from whence this started. We talk about this game all the time, Tyler. October 1st of 2016, down 13-3 at half against Minnesota, and a team that was about to go 1-3. If you told us at that time that we turn back the clock and move it forward in this case to November of 2017, that they would have just completed their second undefeated season at home in a row, I mean, what would you say at that point?
I would have thought you're out of your mind. It's totally to go undefeated in 2 straight years at home, playing in the Big Ten East, arguably, one of the best, if not the best, conference and division in all of college football. To go, I mean, it's a true testament to the fan base as well, because I mean that's, you're looking at the best, maybe one of the best home field advantages in all of college football. So I think the fans absolutely have a lot to do with it. And, the team comes out fired up, ready to play in front of that crowd. I mean, it's kind of hard not to get the juices flowing in front of 107,000 strong every week. And I think the fans have been great these last 2 seasons. Obviously, winning definitely helps that. The top 10 rankings in this year and last year definitely help. The fans being excited about the games. And, I was even in the Nebraska game with the students on break, with break starting, it was still a really good turnout, 106,000 in really crappy weather, and against the Nebraska team that, let's face it, is just not that good, and the fans still showed up. So 2 years in a row. Next year's going to have a lot of challenges, not to look ahead to 2018, but the 2018 home slate is packed. So if they can go three years in a row, that'd be something too.
Without a doubt. And we look back now before we look forward at the many seniors on this team. You think about the great leaders on this team in the secondary. Marcus Allen, a guy that really is one of the best tacklers that Penn State has had in a very, very long time. Troy Apke came in and had a great year this year, and not expecting him to play. Well, of course, he will not play in the next game against Maryland.
First half only.
First half only with the targeting penalty that came in the second half. So we will see a non-senior start there. It might be Nick Scott. We've talked about some other options that they might have off air here, but Troy Apke's had a great year, not to be lost. And then in terms of in the middle, Jason Kabinda for so many years has been a leader on this team. Really last year came into his own and made himself the leader of that defense. Christian Campbell, Grant Haley on the outside have had great careers as well. I mean, that's just the defense. And you turn it to the offense. Stayshawn Hamilton, the all-time leading receiver at Penn State University. It's an honor that doesn't come around all that often. And really, a guy that's had an up and a down, back up, back down, and really started to end his career on a high note this year.
He's had an unbelievable season.
Really a great year and a good ambassador for this program. So when you look at this team, there are so many young guys we've talked about. The offensive line really, has so much ahead of them in terms of the guys they're returning and what they're going to do to shape their bodies over the next few years. We talk on the defense about how Sharif Miller seems like the elder statesman, and he's only a redshirt sophomore. Right. So there are so many young guys on this team, but the seniors we see behind us, thank you to the seniors for all they've done to this program and for this program. Really, since that 2012, that 2013 class as well, you see groups of individuals that remained committed to a cause that was bigger than them. Not to wax too much poetic, we'll get to some analyzing of football at some point here, but I just think it is important to talk about some of those seniors and the commitment they've had. And this isn't just about this 2017 class. It's about 16, 15, all the way back to the great class of 2012 that really kept this whole thing together.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Bob, because this class, the redshirt seniors, and there were a couple of them. You look at guys like Andrew Nelson, Brandon Mann, 2 offensive linemen. Then on the defensive tackles, you have Curtis Cothran and Parker Cothran.
Yep.
And I might be missing one or two other guys, but these guys were redshirt seniors, and they were actually Bill O'Brien recruits. So they came in under Bill O'Brien, and now it's after this year, all the recruits are actually going to now be James Franklin recruits. And I think it's also interesting, the true seniors that graduated, guys like Jason Kabinda, Grant Haley, Marcus Allen, Mike Gesicki, just to name a few, Christian Campbell. These were guys that Franklin really only had about a month or so to either get committed or hold on to their commitment from the time that he was hired as a Penn State coach to the National Signing Day, which is about a month difference. So, it really – and these guys all had great careers, and a lot of them, outside of Gesicki, weren't really that highly recruited players, believe it or not. Grant Haley was a 3-star. I believe he was committed to Vanderbilt. There were some other guys that were committed to Vanderbilt.
Including the redshirt junior Trace McSorley.
Exactly, and so that's part of the class, but he still has another year because he redshirted.
Right.
Amani Oruwari, I believe, was committed to Vanderbilt, and I think Koa Farmer may have been too. I'm not sure on that. Redshirt juniors, but I mean, it is crazy that a lot of these guys, even Marcus Allen and Jason Kabinda, were 3-star recruits, and I mean, they're going to go down forever in Penn State in the history books for being great leaders on memorable teams, playmakers. So it's a very special class. And then obviously on offense, the biggest loss there for seniors are going to be Deshaun Hamilton, another one,
Yep.
Bill O'Brien recruit, and Mike Gesicki, and Saeed Baknal as well. I mean, they're 3 playmakers that they're gonna have to replace moving forward, and they had great Penn State careers. And we wish them nothing but the best. And some of them are going to be making some solid paychecks for a couple years in the NFL coming up.
Good, and then hopefully after that, some donations back to the
course.
Penn State football
course.
program, and obviously Letterman for all of time. Does it feel, Tyler, that this is kind of a changing of the guard, and not that we won't always have these sentimental feelings towards the players that leave the program, but after what's happened over the last few years, James Franklin pulls in just a tremendous recruiting class at the end of 2016, and now we look at the 2018 guys that they're about to bring in. 2019 is right on the horizon. They're already looking at 4 stars and 5 stars, and
Right.
even some of the early 2020s. But really, what we've talked about for so long, the 2018 class here is so full that there's just no room to add. Let's say if Owe and Parsons, maybe Walker all want to come in.
Tyreek Smith, too.
Smith.
Yep.
That there might not be that room. And these are 4- and 5-star guys we're talking about. Obviously, it'll always be sentimental, but is there something special about the last 2 years, about saying goodbye to guys that took this program to the top from that 2, 3, and sometimes 4-star rating sort of bandwidth,
Right.
if you will?
So you make a really good point, Bob. I think that really what you're looking at is you're looking at guys that played football at a very early in their career. Grant Haley, Christian Campbell, Kabinda, and
Deshaun.
Many of them really probably weren't ready, but Penn State couldn't afford to redshirt due to depth and because of the sanctions. And now you're looking at now they're almost finally finished, and you have guys behind them that are actually probably higher rated recruits, and they're waiting in the wings. So in terms of changing of the guard, it might be. They're definitely going to lose their experience and their leadership. I think leadership's a big thing that they're going to lose from this group. And, I mean, they're great players. But I think that Penn State's at a point now that they can reload like these other programs. I think they're almost at that point where they can reload, and you have guys that have redshirted or maybe have backed up these guys for a couple years, and now it's their time. So a little bit of a changing of the guard, but I think that the guys that are coming in, they're highly recruited guys, and they'll be ready to go.
And it's not that these other programs at the top that we're talking about here that do just reload that way. It's not that they don't feel like some of these guys are forever Buckeyes, for example, forever Trojans, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, a guy like James Laurinaitis at Ohio State, right, still absolutely beloved. And guys at these other schools that came in as very, very strong recruits, obviously they still feel very strongly about them. It just feels like a very unique situation at Penn State specifically.
Right.
With everything that's happened with the sanctions.
Exactly.
and everything that has gone on and how this program has rebounded when I don't think many people expected it to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that this senior class really went through everything, especially the fifth-year seniors. I mean, when these guys came in, they were told, you might be able to play in a bowl game later in your career, and turns out that they certainly did that, and a little bit more. They won the Big Ten championship. They went to the Rose Bowl. They're going to go to another good bowl game this year. So they definitely exceeded, I think, what they thought they were getting themselves into before they came to Penn State, which is amazing because, I mean, those guys give so much to the university, and obviously they're student athletes, so there's no huge benefits there outside of the free education, and obviously they get a lot of perks, but they did give it all to the university, and they will forever be remembered for that.
Nittany Lion Sports Report live. Bob Long Sports here. Tyler Gehlhaus alongside this evening. Excited to be along for what's been a phenomenal ride for this team this year. 9-2, the Nittany Lions after a win, 56-44 after what was a long and wet day of preparations for some of us tailgating. Great time getting into the stadium as well and just having the opportunity to watch these guys one last time. What did we see, Tyler? Well, we saw a Penn State team that jumped out to a 42-10 lead after scoring 35 straight points to end the half. So 42-10 after 30 minutes of play. And at that point, James Franklin started rolling in his twos and able to get some backups in and see what they had essentially against a Tanner Lee that, while he is not the most put-together quarterback, his style and, he has some form of, we'll call it swag, but when things have not always gone well for this Nebraska team this year, but they still have the opportunity to score and score in bunches. That's what they did in the second half, able to get the ball into space and get the ball down the field. Of course, recovered an onside kick with a minute to go and scored on the very last play of the game. So 56-44 may look a little bit closer, obviously, than the score indicated. I guess a point of clarification as well. Had some folks talking about, well, why didn't they kick that extra point? When a game is scored, a touchdown is scored at the end of the game and there's no time left on the clock, they won't kick that extra point unless it can somehow affect the outcome of the game. Right, so you think back at the Iowa game when Penn State scored to go up 21-19 against the Iowa Hawkeyes on the final play of the game. Juwan Johnson puts the finger up to shush the Iowa fans. Great pageantry, all of it. They knelt on a 2-point conversion because had Tyler Davis attempted an extra point, it gets blocked and Iowa takes it back. That counts as essentially a safety. It's 2 points and it would have tied the game. That's the only reason they had to kneel the football that evening. So
I didn't even know that. That's pretty impressive. Did you know that going into the Penn State-Nebraska game? Did you know that they would? Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, let's break down some X's and O's. What's the big difference you saw? There's many right answers,
right,
but there is a right answer.
So the biggest thing I saw was the offensive line play in the run game. Obviously, Barkley had a huge day, 17 carries for 158 and 3 touchdowns. Now, you look at this, it could be a combination of things. Nebraska gave up over 400 yards rushing to Minnesota, so I'm not sure if, it's a little bit of Penn State's making adjustments or getting a little bit better on the offensive line, or you got to consider the opponent. I would say hopefully it's a combination of both because I don't think, it is Nebraska's defense at the end of the day. It's not your typical Nebraska black shirt defense, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it was the opponent, but that may have been a good thing for Penn State's offensive line to kind of build that confidence back up and to know that, look, guys, we can do this. Like, if we can just make a couple holes here and there, Barkley's going to be able to take off like he did to start the game. So that's really what stood out for me. And also, I think McSorley, again, played one of the best games of his career in poor weather conditions. He was making good throws in the tight windows. Also, quick shout-out to Juwan Johnson for the one-handed catch on the sideline.
Unbelievable.
That was pretty impressive. That was like Odell Beckham-esque right there. So they're the things that stood out most to me. And outside of the score, because I left at the end of the third and saw it was 56-44, I was like, wow, what happened? But Penn State obviously was getting some younger guys in, and Nebraska stayed with the starters, and at the end of the day, I mean, it was 42-10 at half. I mean, the game was in the bag, so definitely not as close as the score indicated at the end of the day.
You're exactly right in terms of that key to the game. It was the lack of negative plays. What we saw from Saquon Barkley is over the course of the past few games, he's been bottled up, clearly. However, in some of those games, he would get a big play here and there. There are a couple against Ohio State that you can think of. Of course, against Northwestern, he was bottled up, 53 yards to the house. So the big play in and of itself was not the issue. It wasn't 5 yards and a cloud of dust every time, 3 yards and a cloud of dust. It was the loss of 5, the loss of 4, the loss of 7. Go back and chart the plays. Tyler, not a negative yardage play for Saquon Barkley.
That hasn't really happened all year. I mean, because there were many halves or quarters in this year that he's having negative yards in a quarter, and it's like, and you really know some of it might be on him, but the majority is on the defense keying in on him and the offensive line. And you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it is Nebraska, but it's also a Big Ten defense. So
right.
It's nothing against Georgia State, but it's not Georgia State. I mean, it's a Big Ten defense. Obviously, they're not the best, but it's good stuff moving forward. Even though they only have 2 games left, it's better late than ever.
Right, and so now they stay 9-2, and we can take a quick look at the rankings here as well. They came in the AP Top 25 at the number 12 spot. They came in the coaches poll at the 11th spot. Again, a very, 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 very long shot in terms of the college football playoff. There may be a way home, and that would assume that Alabama beats Auburn, and Alabama then beats Georgia. You would have to count on Georgia falling behind Penn State, which I think that would happen with 2 losses in the last 4 weeks for the Bulldogs.
Well, if they look at the scores of the losses, it would make total sense. I mean, they lost on the road by 30 to 20 something to the number at the time. Auburn was maybe 10, and Penn State has those 2 losses on the road by combined 4 points to rank teams back to back, and obviously, that's you're going to keep kicking yourself for losing. Really, the Michigan State game.
Oh my goodness!
But both of those games, Penn State had and probably should have won.
Sure.
Just because being up 18 at the Horseshoe, but I mean obviously that's over with and they can't control it anymore. It's a little frustrating. But then again, and then we're talking about if they would jump Georgia, I would like to think so, but at the same time, I'm not really sure if the committee this year is concerned about your margin of defeat. And I say that because Ohio State just seems to be floating around right now. And for the life of me, I get if they win against Michigan. They're already in the Big Ten championship. They beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Then they beat Wisconsin, hypothetically. Okay, they have a Big Ten championship, but they have arguably, they lost to Oklahoma by, I think, 18 maybe. And then
15 points.
15 points. And then to lose by 30-plus to Iowa is like the worst loss compared to any of these teams that are up there, in my opinion. I just think that, I think that there's a way that they can make it, and I think that they actually have a pretty good chance. I can't come to grips with that.
Sure. And the one I struggle with is Southern Cal, and we're not going to get too deep into that one today because while you see them in the AP Top 25 after a close win against UCLA that has since dispatched of its head coach, and while you see them in front of Penn State in the coaches poll as well, in the Top 25, USC is still at number 11 while Penn State is at 10. So that's the college football playoff poll. So we look at the AP Top 25 right now, and I don't want to get too much into depth on this, Tyler, but this is a opportunity for Penn State. We can talk about it. Let's just say that Auburn and Georgia fall behind Penn State. And Penn State started at 10, so don't go on this graphic.
We're going
right
off the college football playoff.
Going off the college football playoff where Penn State is 10. But just with the benefit of having the updated games from this week, here's the AP Top 25. So Georgia and Auburn fall behind Penn State. Penn State is up to 8. Michigan beats Ohio State. Ohio State falls behind Penn State. Ohio State then beats Wisconsin. You would have to hope and pray that loss for Wisconsin may throw them behind Penn State, as Penn State was at 10, Wisconsin at 5 at that college football playoff from week 12. Notre Dame, you hope that they lose to Stanford. Stanford in the last week of the regular season. So Notre Dame would fall. We said Ohio State would fall. And we said that in theory Wisconsin would fall. I think that's a tough one. So that's 5. Penn State is now up to 5. Miami beats Clemson. 2 losses. Miami wins in the ACC championship game. Clemson to 2 losses. You'd think maybe, possibly, they would fall behind Penn State. So now they're up to 4. Now you're thinking, what about Oklahoma? What about TCU? I don't think that one matters. I think if Oklahoma were to lose to TCU, I think TCU would jump Penn State. You see them ahead of them in the AP 25. Again, that's not of concern. We're talking about the college football playoff poll from last week. We haven't got it. We won't get it till tomorrow, but TCU was 2 spots back of Penn State. I still think that they would jump Penn State. But I don't think both of them would. It wouldn't be TCU and Oklahoma in the college football playoff. So that's your way home. So start by cheering for Stanford and Michigan this weekend, as well as Alabama, and we can go from there.
There is a chance. I mean, I'd put it at probably less than 5%, if I were a betting man. But they do have a chance. It's going to be weird though, because it's weird having to root. Last year Penn State wanted Ohio State to beat Michigan.
Right.
This year it's the opposite, but Penn State, regardless, doesn't have any opportunity to make the Big Ten championship, which is a shame, because if they, again, took care of the business against Michigan State, you might be looking at something different here.
Right.
Which also would have been that 13th data point for Penn State.
I don't think you're worried about what anybody else is doing right now if Penn State had won that
right.
game against
Unfortunately,
Michigan State.
and yeah, I mean, it stinks that they took it. They took themselves out of it. But
one more look, just with the benefit of what you just said, Tyler, because I think it's a great point. Let's say that Penn State had only lost one game.
They're 10-1.
I mean, they're right there at that number 5 spot, right near Wisconsin, either above or below. They're right there, and they'd have an opportunity to beat Wisconsin.
But I don't know if they would have made the conference championship still, though, because
why?
Iowa. If Penn State lost to Ohio State, so they would have needed Ohio State to lose this week at Michigan.
That's a good point.
And then they would have slid into the Big Ten championship. But even if they had the one loss and they didn't play for the Big Ten championship, I still think they would have had a good chance at a top 4 spot.
Yeah.
Based on everything that's happened since. But I mean, a lot has to happen, and Auburn could very well beat Alabama. So then it doesn't matter anymore, in my opinion, if that happens, because you think all this needs to happen, right?
Oh, I think every step of it.
Everything needs to happen, which is why I give it less than a 5% chance. But I think some of that stuff's going to happen. I just don't see all of it happening.
Right. Yeah, it's like the old parlay.
Do you think that Michigan has any chance? I mean, they have a chance, but what chance do you give them to beat Ohio State? I mean, you're looking at Harbaugh, who hasn't beaten them yet, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. The fan base is starting to get a little anxious with them. Their quarterbacks are just getting hurt, and it's unfortunate for them. I mean, I think they're back to O'Korn again.
Yep.
So they went from Spate to O'Korn,
via injury
to Peters,
and Peters because of performance,
and now back to O'Korn. So the game is at Michigan. I just don't know how much of a chance I give them to win that game.
It's got to be on the defense, right? I mean, it's got to be on the defensive end.
And you got to think maybe they're like, this could be Jim Harbaugh's saving grace too. I mean, that means everything to that fan base who hasn't beaten Ohio State in years. It feels like,
right?
If they could, and they blew the game last year, as Penn State fans are very thankful for. But you never know in these rivalry games. You just never know.
Michigan completely outplayed Ohio State last year. I know this isn't that game, but you remember their 2 touchdowns in regulation, Tyler, had a combined offensive output of 4 yards.
Mm-hmm.
4. An interception return for a touchdown, and then a turnover that brought it back to the 4-yard line.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then they started from the 25-yard line and scored their overtime touchdowns.
I think
double overtime?
It was one or the other. It may have been double. You might be right.
I thought it was.
I'll look that up. But
31-27, something like that rings a bell.
Something like that. I'll get a score for you in the meantime. But I mean, I guess you never know. Michigan's
Or
defense
30
is.
to 27 because they didn't
Yeah.
kick the extra point.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sorry.
But why didn't they kick it? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm actually more anxious about the. I'm more interested in the Auburn Alabama game. I think that's going to be a complete slugfest. I think it's going to be back and forth. It's at Auburn. I mean, obviously, everyone talks about Michigan, Ohio State being the biggest rivalry. You know, I think that we might see that just a little more because of where we're located. But, I mean, Alabama, Auburn, to me, the Iron Bowl, in-state. I mean, that's in-state. It seems like every year it's a very meaningful game usually for the SEC West. I'm not saying it's a better rivalry than Ohio State, Michigan, but, I mean, that's as good as it gets, too, right there.
So let me ask you this question. It's something I just thought of. We can rank rivalries based on, let's say, most important right now, most relevant. But then, what do you think the rivalry with the most vitriol is?
Can you give me a synonym for that word, please?
Vitriol, hatred. Country of origin.
Hatred.
America.
College football we're going with right here is, you know what? It probably is Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, I'm sure you'll see it Saturday. There probably will be, I don't want to say a fight, but probably a scuffle, a lot of trash talking and warm-ups. Coaches will probably be pushed away. The players, a couple of years ago, there was a fight, and the Ohio State players got kicked out and were infamous for giving the crowd the double bird at Michigan Stadium. You got to love it. Great sportsmanship.
What's that guy's name? Marcus Hall?
It was a lineman, Marcus Hall, and Dontre Wilson also got kicked out of that game, too.
That's right.
So, the little guy. But I would say that is probably the most hated game. And not that USC, UCLA, I was watching a little bit of that on Saturday. I thought it was interesting. I was looking around on my Google map to see like how close the campuses were. Did you know that UCLA is closer to USC's campus than they are to the Rose Bowl? I was just messing around, and I saw it, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then you forget that USC's like in the Rose Bowl, it seems like every other year, and they have like a 20-minute drive to the Rose Bowl. I mean,
crazy.
It's unbelievable. And you wonder why they always have so many fans there because it's right there.
Yeah.
But I guess it probably is Ohio State, Michigan for the most hatred.
So I'll throw two at you. I'll throw one basketball rivalry just for fun, but then also college football. A little bit under the radar, but the Egg Bowl, I think, has some of the most hatred in the country, and that's Mississippi State against Ole Miss, because they're both kind of the little brothers in the SEC West. They're both fighting for an increasingly smaller fraction of recruiting territory, and they're resorting to, I would say, more and more, well, dirty tactics for one, but then there's more of a willingness to expose one another. For example, the Mississippi State alum that was able to uncover the Hugh Freeze issues this year. Mississippi State has been involved in reporting regarding issues at Ole Miss back to the Ndamukong Suh ages. Of course, Mississippi State also had a hand in Cam Newton and that coming to light as well. But there is big-time issues between Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and I think it's because of they're both kind of digging in their trenches, but the land is kind of shrinking around them. They're becoming less and less relevant in college football. And so that one, I'll argue, is just as intense, vitriolic as the Iron Bowl and as Ohio State versus Michigan. Basketball, the border war, Missouri, Kansas.
Ooh, I didn't even know that was a rivalry.
Big time rivalry.
Do they usually play that in Kansas City, that game?
They did at the Sprint Center, but they don't play anymore. And I would say that the rivalry has gotten even bigger in the time since Missouri left the Big 12.
Okay, because I know that Illinois usually plays Missouri too sometimes, and that's another border type of game. And I know that they would play that at a neutral site quite often, but I didn't realize that Missouri and Kansas for basketball is a big rivalry.
Yeah, it's a big deal to the point where you have chancellors at each school. They've thrown barbs at each other before, and it's gotten bad. Fan issues as well. It's a rivalry with vitriol. I don't know if it's the best rivalry, but it might be the most heated. So, anyways, that's why I wanted to bring that one up.
Quick thing before we talk about the rivalries. 30-27 Ohio State.
There you
Double
go.
overtime.
Double overtime.
And talk about rivalries. I would say, we talked about the hatred rivalries. I don't know how I forgot, but the best, in my opinion, best rivalry in all of sports is Army-Navy.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
just because of the sportsmanship, what it really means to play at those institutions.
Yep.
Great citizens, model citizens, and obviously they're not going Army or Navy to get to the NFL. Some do here and there, but they're going to serve the country. I mean, it's from pregame to postgame. I mean, it is just an amazing show, and that should be a good game this year too. I mean, Army's pretty better than a lot of people thought. I think they might be 8-2 or 7-3. I mean, 8-2, 9-2, something like that. So they're having a really good year. And Navy obviously just gave Notre Dame a run for their money on Saturday. Is that game in Philadelphia this year? Do you know?
I think it is in Philadelphia.
Check on that as well.
Check that out. Actually, we were at the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame dinner, and unfortunate that you couldn't join us this year, Tyler. I hope that you can make it next year because it really was a great experience. But the reason I bring it into this show, we had the opportunity to speak with Steve Gehlhaus, who is the representative of Army West Point. There was a special induction ceremony for the entire Army-Navy football game at the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame dinner. So you think a lot of times they're honoring individuals. They had Ron Jaworski there. Lou Nolan was a 2015 inductee. Tim Kerr of the Philadelphia Flyers. Bob Boone of the Philadelphia Phillies. Some big names went in, Tyler. But they had a special induction ceremony for the Army-Navy game as well, and they sent this gentleman, Steve Gehlhaus, who played for the Army West Point Knights from 1988 to 1991 on the offensive line, and he talked about how Philadelphia was home and how the Vet was a really homey place to play, but the ground was harder than this table that we're sitting on right now. And Philadelphia really has been a home for the Army-Navy game for so long, and really a beacon of what that game is all about. We talked about the rivalries that are intense. Yes, that's really intense. The rivalries with the vitriol, one day a year. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Steve said. It's why I brought it up, why you reminded me of it. We want to beat Navy with every fiber of our being on that day, but we cheer for them for the other 364 days every year. It's really cool to hear somebody make a statement like that.
Because they're going to be, going to war together.
Absolutely.
And so it's an incredible game. And again, it is in Philadelphia this year. Saturday the 9th of December, 3 o'clock on CBS. So that's like a bucket list item for me. That's something I'd like to go to.
You should go.
Tickets are really expensive, but it's probably worth it. I mean, just to be there in the atmosphere and all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure it's an unbelievable time. Have you ever been to one of those games?
I have not. I do have to get to one.
It's not the most exciting brand of football. They run like the triple options and stuff, but I mean, it should be a good one this year. Also, on the same day, Penn State fans as the Heisman ceremony.
Yep.
Yours truly, Saquon Barkley, should be, I would imagine, would be invited to that.
He's one of 3 nominated for the Maxwell of today.
Okay. Who are the other 2? Mayfield and Bryce
Love.
Okay, so he's pretty much a guarantee to be invited to New York City for the Heisman Trophy.
Congrats to Mike Gesicki as well, by the way.
Mike Gesicki.
For the Mackey Award.
Right, so, and I expect both of them will probably be first team all Big Ten as well. It'll be interesting to see who else fills those teams come the end of the year. Unfortunately, I don't think, we talked about this last week, I don't think Barkley's going to win the Heisman. He's probably going to go to Mayfield, who obviously is making headlines for some of the wrong reasons now. Mm-hmm. Some inappropriate gestures and comments. Oklahoma-Kansas game. Does that impact?
How do we leave that off our rivalry, huh? Oklahoma-Kansas football.
Yeah,
new on the horizon.
How about that? Kansas not shaking hands with Oklahoma. I mean, that's worse than what Maryland did a couple years ago at Penn State, not shaking hands. I mean, you're 1-9, and you're playing the number 3 team in the country, and arguably the best player in the country, and you're not going to shake hands. Mm-hmm. Like I don't understand that part of it.
In honor of Maryland Week, by the way, just to get back to that game, never forget that was Randy Edsall's dream job. University of Maryland, Randy Edsall's dream job, 1 year and out. So we have to, that's our annual reminder of that. Randy Edsall's dream job, University of Maryland. Nice job.
Nice job. Yeah, so do you think that his actions, because a lot of people are starting to think This guy's kind of reminding us of Johnny Manziel. I mean, he a similar style of football, and he's had some off-the-field issues with the law, and now he's doing these gestures, and it's not a one-time thing. It's like an ongoing thing. Does that impact him, in your opinion, for the Heisman voters?
I think if nothing else happens from here in, no. But if something else were to happen, let's say in the Big 12 championship game, who's to say? I mean, it probably depends on the gravity of it. The other issue is that it's not close right now. Mm-hmm. I think he's running away with it. Quite honestly, Saquon Barkley, I don't think he deserves it. And I want to be careful with the way I say that. He's the most talented player in college football. When given an equal set of holes, depth, offensive line, blocking, I think he would be the most successful player in college football. You know, he's a different runner than Bryce Love to some extent, but give him that type of offensive line, I think he would have been equally, if not more so, successful.
Right.
So when I say he doesn't deserve it, take what I say with a broader context. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Heisman Trophy is a team award. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely a team award. Not only in that football is such a team sport that you physically cannot be successful on your own.
And we discussed this last week.
Right? If Oklahoma wasn't blocking for Baker Mayfield, he wouldn't be winning.
If his receivers weren't catching, it does come down to everything. I agree.
So there's that, and then there's does your team win? Now Saquon Barkley and the Penn State Nittany Lions have, I think, taken care of that enough that if he was put in the spot, look at Lamar Jackson last year. If he put up the numbers, he would have won. But you can't necessarily go 6-6 either. Robert Griffin, my apology. Hey, listen, good for you. I mean, he did it. But very rarely does a 6-6 team produce a Heisman Trophy winner. So just generally by the name and the nature of the game of football is that you can't do it on your own, less so than basketball per se. Mm-hmm. But not only that, your team has to put you in it. And that's a two-way street that Baker Mayfield is all over right now. I mean, both of them. It's of Bryce Love, Saquon Barkley, Baker Mayfield. Oklahoma by far the best shot to win a national championship. And Baker Mayfield has, I wouldn't say by far because Bryce Love has phenomenal numbers and it's tough to compare across positions, but I would say Baker Mayfield has the best resume as well as the best team.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to disagree with. Obviously, midway through the season, it was probably Barkley's to lose.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not how the Heisman isn't 1.5 of a season; it's a full season. I mean, I think that Saquon Barkley is going to have a much better professional career than Baker Mayfield, but that doesn't matter because that's not what the award's about. It's not who's going to be the best at the next level; it's who was the best player that year. Saquon Barkley is also really a model citizen. James Franklin praises him. Obviously, Baker Mayfield is not, but at the same time, it's not about who the best citizen is. Regardless, I think that Barkley, and I think he is the most talented player, but the most talented player doesn't always win that.
Yep.
Also, on the topic of Saquon Barkley, 304 yards he needs to break Evan Royster's rushing Penn State all-time leading rushing record. 2 games left, and I say 2 because he did say last game that he will play in the bowl game, and all signs are pointing to him leaving for the NFL, which I totally agree with. He should. It's his future. Do you think he can do that? I mean, obviously, it's about 150 a game. It's really going to come down to the line, a lot of this.
Sure.
These last 2 games, and depending on who they get matched up in the bowl game with.
I think he can do it. Absolutely. He put up over 150 against Nebraska.
On 17 carries, too.
Yeah,
so.
I think he can do that against Maryland. It's all going to be how many carries does he get. If Maryland is a blowout in the second half, which I think Penn State fans would expect it to be, and I think that's reasonable.
You never know, but it should be.
Then I don't think he plays much in the second half. And I don't think James Franklin, nor do I think Saquon Barkley, are going to operate under the guise and under the motives of a record. Even though, for a good portion of the year, I think they were operating under the incentives of the potential Heisman Trophy.
See, I think that if they have a decent lead, well, it depends what we talk about a decent lead. Obviously, they had a good lead this week, and it evaporated, but it wasn't as close as scoreboard showed. I think that they might do everything they can to have him break this all-time leading rushing record. I mean, and I say that because obviously Saquon Barkley says that, he doesn't care about the individual awards, the records, but really some part of him has to care about that. I mean, that's a pretty incredible accomplishment. And like Evan Royster was an unbelievable running back at Penn State, but he was nothing like Saquon Barkley. I mean, really,
it was a lifetime achievement award because he had 4 years.
You could argue that nobody has been like Saquon Barkley that we've seen at least.
Closest is probably Kijana Carter.
And Larry Johnson was up there too, I'd say. But
different runner, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's something that he probably wants to break the record. I'm sure Franklin wants to see it too, but I don't think that they're going to go to the extreme to do it. I don't think they're going to be like, giving him the ball 45 times against Maryland. I don't think it's going to be anything like that, but hey, I mean, if he breaks off a couple long runs, he can cut that in half very quickly, and then from there. So, I mean, hopefully for his sake he does, because I think he deserves it. And I think that what he said about coming back to play in the bowl game, I shouldn't say coming back. It makes it seem like he's coming back next year, but for him to say, I'm playing in the bowl game, I'm not doing what Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, I'm different than them. I think that speaks volumes about him.
Agreed. Totally agreed. The concern, well, I don't know if it's a concern or not. It's probably nitpicking here, but James Franklin, if he were to do something that could be perceived as overworking Barkley for something like a record, he's already had a couple times this year, Georgia State, in terms of calling the timeout right or wrong for that last field goal. Kid ended up missing the field goal after the timeout, so people thinking he was quote-unquote icing him. The comment about Akron versus Pitt. For everything he's done very well, there have been times this year where he's been under a little bit of a spotlight for decisions he's made. If you do give him the ball 40 times, which I don't think they will, that could come off very poorly. And James, I think he's got a lot of positive momentum, but he probably also doesn't need something like that to come back.
Do you think that does James Franklin care what people think about him?
I would say he does not.
I mean,
he's
laughing all the way to the bank no matter what.
Right.
He's changed Penn State football for the better. I think that it would be the media getting on him.
Yep.
But you see a lot of this with like coaches making questionable decisions. But at the end of the day, it's like they're the coach. They make the decision. Is it going to hurt recruiting? I don't.
I wouldn't see.
You know what I mean? So really, what does it? It makes other fan bases not like him as much. In my opinion, so what if they don't like him? I mean, I think it's a good thing if you don't like another team's coach because that means they're probably doing something right. I don't like Urban Meyer because he's a great coach and he's a rival team of Penn State. So I don't, that's just my natural. I don't like him because he's a good coach and he has that program running like a well-powered machine. So so if people don't like James Franklin, I think that's also a good thing. But I see what you're saying that he's got to be careful because some of the comments and some of the decisions he's made. But
it's just like a lifetime achievement award if he continues to. But you know what? You had some very good logic there. I think you convinced me, and I don't think it's a big deal. I think
he cares more about what his player is going to accomplish rather than what people are going to say about him.
Yeah.
That's why the players love playing for him because he always has his players' backs. So.
No, yeah, you've convinced me. I think it was a very good argument, and I don't think it matters as much as when I brought it up actually.
But people will talk about it if it's like if they're up by like 40 on Maryland,
right.
And there's like 3 minutes
and
left.
They run a wheel route.
And or they're still pounding the ball with Barkley.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't like that either, even because you'd like to see other guys get chances too, and especially and really not many guys have gotten that big of chances this year behind him. Robinson's been extremely quiet this year, and Sanders, when he gets the ball, he's shown good flashes, and I think Penn State, not to look ahead to 2018, assuming Saquon Barkley leaves, they're going to be in pretty good hands at the running back position.
I think they're going to be fine. I really do.
You know what? Who they're going to miss most on the offense is Gesicki.
Right.
There is no tight end.
Is it possible he's been a little quiet this year, though, even? In terms of his visible impact, I think absolutely what he's been able to do has been phenomenal. Although he had 2 games in a row where he was not blocking.
And he's just a freak athlete, a mismatched nightmare. I would have liked him see I would have liked Penn State to go a little more vertical with them this year than they
Yeah.
did, like what we saw in the Big Ten championship against Wisconsin
And Michigan.
Yeah, so exactly. I would have liked to see him go a little more vertical this year, but he's had a really solid year, a really solid career for somebody. His first 2 years really struggled. I mean, really couldn't even catch that well, and that was his strength. And then he started working on his blocking. His blocking still has ways to go for the NFL, but I mean, in my opinion, you're looking at probably a second round at the latest pick in the upcoming draft. I mean, he's just a freak athlete. His vertical, his speed, his size. So, I mean, I think they're going to miss him a lot on the offensive side of the ball for next year. He's not a guy you can just – he's like Saquon Barkley. You can't replace him with just one player. You have to change up your offense a little bit. And going off of the tight ends for next year, Nick Bowers caught his first touchdown pass.
Yes, that was great.
And I think, you know what, if he can get healthy and he's getting there, he had some injury concerns. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's another guy that is a freak athlete.
Mm-hmm.
He can jump. He's a better blocker than Gesicki. He's a little more buff than Gesicki. I mean, that's a guy that could maybe step in and be the tight end next year alongside with Jonathan Holland, make a nice little 1-2 punch. So the cupboard is far from bare there, as well as running back.
You're right, but we talked about the seniors at the beginning. Really, Holland had 3 or 4 catches this year, had a cup of coffee in the Nebraska game. It's really been Mike Gesicki's role, his team at the tight end possession, I should say. But I think that's worth mentioning as well, that some of these other positions, Barkley had Miles Sanders to spell him, Andre Robinson, again, early on. Gesicki from day one was the guy at tight end and took a lot of snaps, so we made comments about his blocking, and really against Michigan State, that was a big issue. But generally speaking, Mike Gesicki has been the guy who's taken just about all the snaps at tight end, and that's very, very commendable.
For a couple of years now, too.
Yep.
Because he didn't redshirt. I think he was maybe behind. Well, he and Adam Brenneman split time a little bit, and then obviously Adam Brenneman had the injuries back a couple years ago, and I think he may be behind Jesse James for his freshman year. So, I mean, he definitely had some good players ahead of him, and then it was his for the taking, Kyle Carter as well. So, I mean, it was his for the taking, and he progressed every season, and you're right. He's going to be – he played a lot of football for Penn State, and they're really going to miss him next year.
Nittany Lion Sports Report here on BLS. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus. Now, we did have a question come in from Tom Trainer. He asked, if you're a Penn State football fan and you get the opportunity for a New Year's Six matchup, which team do you want to play? Which team would be the best matchup, the most intriguing matchup to go against the Nittany Lions? So, Tyler, what do you think?
I would say right now, and I think it's a pretty legitimate chance of this happening, is probably Notre Dame. I think it could be Penn State, Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. I think that I'm not sure really. I don't watch enough Notre Dame to see how Penn State matches up. I do know Notre Dame has a very good offensive line. I just think, it's two iconic programs to play that game and then play it in Cowboy Stadium, home of the Philadelphia Eagles after last night. No, but I mean, it would be a great game. I really think that, you have two featured running backs in Saquon Barkley and Josh Adams, both local kids, too, from this region of Pennsylvania. So I think it would be a great game. It would get a lot of hype. And I think that, I don't – and not to add to it, Brandon Wimbush, the quarterback for the Fighting Irish, was a Penn State commit. Penn State later filled his spot with Tommy Stevens, who's waiting in the wings, and I think is still going to have a very good career when he gets a chance to play quarterback. So I think that that's an actual legitimate matchup, and also maybe Auburn. I could see them playing Auburn, and I think you're looking at probably a Cotton Bowl or maybe an Orange Bowl at this point.
Yep. So there's Auburn, Notre Dame you mentioned. I think that would be a great matchup against Notre Dame because you have two phenomenal running backs, but contrasting styles. Notre Dame wants to run it down your throat with that great offensive line. Penn State now with that defensive line that's had a little bit of struggles in terms of its depth and guys going down. Torrance Brown at the beginning, Ryan Buchholz as well. You're going to have, if that's the matchup, a really interesting contour there. Penn State liking to spread the football out, go over the top at times, but really more about putting 3, 4, sometimes 5 wide receivers out on the field, splitting Saquon Barkley out, and getting him on the wheel route, things like that. I mean, the way they run that offense is far different from that of Notre Dame, but I think the two iconic programs, like you mentioned, the difference in style, and some of the local kids playing against the Penn State team that also recruited him. Josh Adams, you mentioned Wimbush as well, a little different there.
A couple guys on the line, McGlinchey from Penn Charter.
Yeah.
And I think that you just brought up a great point. I mean, Penn State and Notre Dame, they battle for a lot of recruits right now.
Yep.
They tend to look at similar kids that, good academics, obviously, and I think that they battle, and a lot of those times, not that if you win a game, a kid's going to go to your school over the other, but I mean, they keep seeing it, and they beat another team you're looking at. That definitely helps, I think. And
sure,
they're battling for recruits every year, and you win some, you lose some. Penn State's been on both sides of that ball, but it really would be a fun game to watch. It would get a ton of hype. It would probably get the most hype out of non-playoff games just because of the seasons that they've had and the return to glory, if you will.
Now, I have not and am not the world's greatest authority on bowl matchups, but as I look at this here, what I think could be a lot of fun would actually be if Penn State were to play Georgia. If Georgia were to lose to Alabama. Now, I don't know how that would happen, Tyler.
That would be good.
But that would be a great matchup.
So, I think if Georgia were to lose to Alabama, that would be in the SEC championship.
Right, so that would be the
so
second
that would
team
mean
out
that
of the
that would
SEC.
mean that Auburn would be the third team.
Right.
So Auburn's probably looking at a Citrus Bowl, probably.
Yep.
Formerly known as Capital One Bowl in Orlando. So you're looking at Penn State, Georgia. I mean, that could be an interesting matchup, and obviously Georgia's got some local kids too on the team that would make it interesting. They're running back DeAndre Swift from St. Joe's Prep. So, what about Penn State Miami? That'd be fun too.
Okay, so
that would mean Miami
were to lose.
Yep, and no, Clemson were to
win. Beat Miami.
So you have Penn State Miami. Obviously, that wouldn't be the Orange Bowl. I don't think they would because that's Miami's home stadium.
Right.
You may be looking at a Cotton Bowl, a Peach Bowl, or even a Fiesta Bowl, which would bring back tons of memories for Penn State Miami, the 1987 national championship, which Penn State did win. I think that'd be a lot of fun, too. I would like them to play Miami, Georgia, or Notre Dame. I think they would all be fun games. I don't want them to play USC just because they played them last year.
Right. What about UCF?
No. I don't want to play UCF because I think that's one of those games that Penn State really doesn't have anything. They have everything to lose and really nothing to gain, in my opinion. Nothing against UCF, but it's they're going to come out with the trick plays, and much like Western Michigan last year against Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're at a good spot with our bowl discussion. Good question from Tom. You want to hit a little bit of high school football? I might be catching you out of left field on this one, but some interesting stuff going on with some kids that will be very relevant at the college level. But Micah Parsons and the Harrisburg Cougars, they lose. Can you believe that? They lose in the round of 16.
Who did they lose to?
Oh, my gosh.
Was it Wilson?
No, it was not Wilson. I'm blanking on something with a G.
I'll look it up for you.
Yeah, look it up for us if you would. But they took a 14-0 lead. Micah Parsons played what it seemed like was a pretty solid game from what I understand. But they got completely bottled up in the second half. Micah Parsons actually took a long touchdown run in the second half that would have put Harrisburg back up 21-14, but that was called back. They never went down and scored from there. Ended up losing. Oh, Governor Mifflin. Thank you. I don't know why I thought about that, but they lost to Governor
Mifflin 26-14.
The number 10 team in the 5A.
That's a huge upset.
When you think 5A, that's the same division as Archbishop Wood. Mm-hmm. Archbishop Wood with Kyle Pitts, who's going to Florida next year.
You think he'll still go there with the coaching change?
Well, that's a good
I guess
question.
a lot can still happen, but
a lot can happen there. That'd be interesting. Should Penn State get back in the mix?
They already have 2 tight ends committed, so that would be adding a third to it. And I think they're already a little tight on scholarships now.
You're right,
because they're trying to fill some other needs. So I guess anything's possible, but I'm not really sure if he's in Penn State's in really their ideal finish to the recruiting season.
You know, he plays defensive end 3 technique for Archbishop Wood, and he made some phenomenal plays in the game that I had the opportunity to call LaSalle against Archbishop Wood. Obviously, he's not doing it at the college level, just for what it's worth. So that Archbishop Wood team, you would think, has a very good shot to roll through and get to the state championship game and possibly win it again. I believe that would be the 4th time in 5 years for Archbishop Wood.
Did they beat Harrisburg last year in the championship?
I don't think that Harrisburg ever got there. I
think Harrisburg was in it last year.
Were they? Was that it?
Because I remember watching Micah Parsons
on PCN.
In Hershey Stadium. And maybe it wasn't against, I don't know who it was against, but a quick note on Micah Parsons. He tweeted today that he got accepted to Penn State. I know a lot of people out there had concerns about his academics and whether or not he was even going to get accepted. He did get accepted. You have to believe that's a good sign for his decision date coming up on December the 20th.
Yep.
We're a little less than a month now. I guess it's today. No, exactly a month until he decides. And I'd be shocked at this point if he did not choose Penn State. I think that it's Penn State's to lose. He started off, committed them for about 14 months. And, I think after he decommitted, he saw some other options. And I think that at the end, Penn State will win out for his services. And it's really the biggest in-state recruit that they've gotten since LeVar Arrington in terms of recruiting and what you can do athletically, physically. What he's done in high school could very well translate to the same type of player that, Arrington was.
Sure.
They're very similar freak athletes. So,
and you're the recruiting guru, but does this bring back memories of when Penn State lost? It was Noah Spence, right, to Ohio State.
So, and Noah Spence, you know what though? That was right around sanction time.
Yep.
I thought he was going to go to Penn State too, but then sometimes you win some, you lose some, like what I said with Notre Dame. But then you have a guy like Noah Spence who it never really panned out for him at Ohio State.
That's true.
He got in trouble.
Profile in high school.
Right, he was a freak. I agree. And he's making good living right now in the NFL. Yeah. He went to Western Kentucky, I believe, after Ohio State, after he got kicked off the team. So, it's always good to see people rebound. That was a guy that I thought Penn State would have had if the sanctions never happened. But I would say that he's probably the best recruit that from a high school film and the recruiting the recruiting showcases and stuff. Micah Parsons is probably the top recruit since Noah Spence.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So a little bit about what's going on in high school football. Also, locally here, Coatesville absolutely pummels Pennsbury and moves
42-2.
Yeah. Unbelievable. St. Joseph's Prep rolls over Northeastern, and you're going to get a big-time matchup. Big time in the quarterfinals between St. Joseph's Prep and Parkland. Parkland out of Allentown.
Parkland's good.
Every year
Parkland is good. I think they won District. What are they? District 3? Is it 3, 11?
It might be.
Might
3.
be 11. No, you're right. District 3 is out in Lancaster, I think.
Okay.
I think so. But whatever district they're in.
Wait, what one's Pittsburgh?
I'm not sure what Pittsburgh is. I'll find out.
I don't think there is District 13 either. I think.
But whatever Parkland's in, they won it for like the 6th straight year.
Yeah.
And it's a huge school too. It's like I have a couple buddies that went there, and it's like maybe graduating class is maybe about 800 to 1,000 for a graduating class.
Wow.
So, it's huge. So.
And they feel like this is their time over St. Joseph's Prep as well. St. Joseph's Prep has a great team, but they lost Swift, and they're maybe not quite as dynamic offensively. Remember, that statistic you just gave about Parkland winning their district X many times in a row and St. Joseph's Prep level of dominance leads you to believe and shows you that they have lost to St. Joseph's Prep a bunch of times in a row in the state championship. In fact, the 1 year, 3 years ago, 2015, that they went to the state championship, it was only because they beat LaSalle in the game that St. Joseph's Prep will play against Parkland this weekend. What I believe is District 12 against District 11's champion every single year in this round of the state playoffs. The winner of this game will play the District 1 champion in the semifinals and then meet somebody from in Central or outside on the western side of Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
So it should be a huge game.
I think, and those games are on Friday too, which is interesting. At least
Some of them are.
The Garnet Valley Coatesville
I think
game
that's
is
the only one.
and that's interesting because it's day after Thanksgiving. So
Yep.
just for practicing purposes and stuff like that, that'll be interesting. Interesting to note that Penn Ridge lost to Garnet Valley in the semis without Penn State commit Nick Tarburton suspended. Apparently, he got suspended in school. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if it's going to impact him in Penn State at all in that recruiting, what's going to happen there. But just a little interesting side note while we talk about high school football and recruiting.
Sure. And then on the other side of the bracket, Pine Richland is absolutely phenomenal.
I saw them on TV early in the year.
First game
they played a team
right?
from Ohio, I think, and their quarterback Jerkovich is going to Notre Dame. He looks like a very good quarterback, and so are they 6A or 5A?
They are 6A.
So they'll probably come out of the West.
That I've been calling Prep versus Pine since week 1 of the season.
That'd be a good one.
Sal, but
that'd be
to put me on the spot.
That'd be a good game out in Hershey.
But State College is going to give them a really tough.
They will.
This coming weekend.
State College seems to always have a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
They always do.
This is one of the best they've had.
And they have a kid that's going to Penn State, but he's a 2019 recruit, and I'm not sure if he's back yet. Keaton Ellis, he had a broken finger, thumb, or something. So is he back and playing?
Actually, you know what?
I'm not sure if he's back yet, but he's going to be a good player too.
Yeah, I don't think he is back, but he's a guy that they've been counting on for that 20. Pretty much just put the mark in the book.
Would
They
State
expect
College
him to
come out of the West?
They would.
So
they're
would have
playing
to play
Pine this weekend.
So and then who's Prep playing again?
Prep is playing Parkland, but other side of the bracket.
Okay.
So the winner of that Parkland St. Joe's Prep game will play out of District 1, the winner of Garnet Valley and Coatesville. And then on the other side of the bracket, you have, I believe, Mannheim or somebody like that up top. They will play the winner of State College and Pine Richland. I can't remember the other two teams that are up on the top right of the bracket. But, Tyler, I fully expect the winner of the state championship game to come out of it's either Parkland and St. Joe's out of the East, I think. No disrespect to District 1. That top team, Neshaminy, was knocked out early. So
Coatesville, everything I've read, they have a quarterback. He might be a sophomore, and he's like Penn State's looking at him and some other schools, and apparently he might be the real deal. And they've been handling business.
Recently.
Coatesville.
They're
to beat a team 42-2 in the playoffs is, no matter what round, is extremely impressive.
I hear you. But if I had to put my money on it, Parkland, St. Joe's Prep out of the East.
I would agree with that.
I'll go Prep. And then Pine Richland State College out of the West, I'll go Pine. I think St. Joe's Prep beats Pine Richland.
Okay. Well, you would know, and I'll hold you to it. I don't know enough about it, but that sounds pretty accurate to me. I think Pine Richland though. After just because I saw them play once, I'd probably have to say they'll probably win the state.
Okay.
Even though I wouldn't want them to win because they're from Western PA, I'd want the local team from the East to win.
Sure. But East has done pretty well recently.
Yeah, they have. But we'll go with Pine Richland. It'll be my pick for now.
I like it. We'll be following that. For those of you that happen to watch us in Pennsylvania here, 1, we appreciate it. And 2, check out your local listings on PCN. If you want to check out St. Joe's Prep, you can listen to the game that we did against St. Joseph's Prep earlier in the year live on Bob Long Sports. That was a lot of fun. And you can watch any of the LaSalle football games from earlier in the year. So, fun stuff here, Tyler. Any last thoughts on this show this evening?
Well, I guess we didn't really get to talk about the Terrapins too much. But I'll say that I believe they're down to maybe their third-string quarterback on the year. This is a team in Maryland that they're going to show fight without a doubt. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Penn State. It's going to be their senior day. They don't like Penn State. I don't know if Penn State really has a problem with Maryland. The non-shaking of the hands in that loss a couple years ago. I'm not sure if maybe only a couple players were really around for that. But I think I think Penn State. I'm not sure. Is the spread 21? Is that what it's?
I don't know what the spread is.
I don't know what the spread is, but I think Penn State will probably win by about 3 touchdowns is what I'm going to go with. It might be a slow first half, but then I think they'll turn it up in the second and finish the regular season at 10-2. For other games this week, I'm going to pick Ohio State over Michigan. And that Auburn-Alabama game is tough. I don't know.
Bama.
they're down a lot of players. So
I hear you.
it's at Auburn. I'm gonna
They're
say
playing well.
either way, it's gonna be a 3-point game or less.
Wow.
In one way or the other, it's
Wow.
gonna be 3 points, for one team. And one team or the other is gonna win by no more than 3 points.
Wow.
It's gonna be close.
So the best Iron Bowl in the history of the rivalry.
Outside of maybe the kick six.
Well, that's what I was getting at. So
Okay.
the best game in the history of the rivalry with the most on the line was the kick six, and that one was determined by 6 points. So this is
And no extra point. So
that's the theme of the show. When do you kick the extra point? There will be a quiz.
see if you were really listening or not this week.
So I like those picks. All right, let's see Auburn win. Let's
What
make it
what
fun.
other games? I know it's like rivalry week they call it, but what
Yeah.
other? Are there any other significant games this week? I mean, usually Bedlam's this week, and that already happened.
Right.
I'm trying to think if there's any really other
So
marquee matchups on the. week.
I mean, all the big rivalries. The Egg Bowl is on Thanksgiving at 7:30.
I'll take Mississippi State in that.
You got Mississippi State. That's another one that Penn State
Dan
possibly could draw.
Dan Mullen,
in a bowl game.
Dan Mullen, or Sinus graduate.
There you
Yeah.
go. The Bears.
The Bears.
There you go. Miami at Pitt. I know I mentioned this one a
A
couple
lot of
shows
empty yellow
ago.
seats, according to Chris
Yes.
Fallon and Kirk Herbstreit. That's hilarious. But
Hey, listen. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold. You just never
Ooh,
know.
That's a good one right there too. Georgia Tech hosting Georgia.
Yep.
You never know with that game. I mean, Georgia could be looking ahead to the SEC championship, and they got to go to Georgia Tech, who obviously always feels disrespected, his little brother
Yep.
in Georgia. And, I mean, if you catch them clicking and you can't stop the run, watch out. I mean, and the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech could win that
Sure.
game. They absolutely could.
West Virginia at Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield will sit at least the first drive.
Oklahoma will still win. I mean, it's one drive.
Yep.
At least one drive.
At least
but-
one drive.
But
yep.
and West Virginia's quarterback Will Grier out for the season.
Yep. Unfortunate to see that. Clemson, South Carolina.
Clemson, but it might be closer than people think. I
South
think.
Carolina's a sneaky 8-3 this year.
Wow, they are really sneaky 8-3. They might be looking at like an Outback Bowl.
Yeah,
That's good for them. I mean, Will Muschamp, what a job he's done this year.
Well, let me take a look at these scores first. I mean, yeah, 28-20 against Florida. They beat Vanderbilt by 7. They beat Tennessee by 6. They hammered Arkansas pretty good. Lost to Texas A&M.
They did.
Beat Louisiana Tech
They definitely
by 1
didn't play the
point.
hardest schedule.
Lost to Kentucky. Beat Missouri by 18. And actually, that's a good win. First game of the season. I forgot about that. NC State.
That
beat
was a
them.
good win.
I mean, you look back on that. That's huge. But, yeah, they
I mean,
kinda
that's better
walked
than
through.
people thought, though,
Yeah.
for South Carolina.
Kind of walked through to an 8-3 there. But yeah, those are the big games this weekend. Notre Dame, Stanford, Washington State, Washington are two other ones. Texas A&M, LSU.
And obviously there's rumblings about Kevin Sumlin's going to be done at
Yeah.
A&M. Obviously this is a time of year
Unfortunate.
a lot of that happens. Jim Mora gone at UCLA. Butch Jones obviously gone at Tennessee. McElwain at Florida. So there's going
Yeah.
to be some more moves coming. Unfortunately, Kevin Sumlin might be one. And you know who I heard might go? Might be their lead candidate.
Who's that?
Jimbo Fisher
Really?
going from Florida State to A&M.
Wow.
Might be the lead candidate right now, as well as Chip Kelly might be the lead candidate for the Gators.
That would be interesting. Well, who would fill Jimbo Fisher at Florida State?
Oh God, I have no idea who would fill his role down there. Maybe that coach at UCF seems to be
oh yeah, okay.
Scott Frost.
Mhm.
But right now, I think if Nebraska fires Mike Riley, which seems pretty likely, Scott Frost played at Nebraska, so I think he'd be the lead candidate in Nebraska.
Interesting. Now, would Justin Fuente go anywhere?
So he's at Virginia Tech right
Yeah.
now. I don't think so because I think
is that not a stepping stone job? It's tough because we never had to
you know what?
evaluate it in that capacity.
I
'cause
don't
of
think
Frank
Virginia
Beamer.
Tech is a top program. I don't. But I don't know if it's a stepping stone job either. Has he done enough at Virginia Tech in your mind to?
No, but he's still young and he's a hot commodity.
I think that when you're looking at coaches, I think the sexy pick this year is for a lot of people is gonna be Scott Frost at UCF.
Yeah.
Trying to think of other coaches.
Charlie, would Charlie Strong go somewhere, or is he going to be comfortable at South Florida?
I mean, do you think maybe Florida looks at him? He was the
asked
D
that
coordinator there, right? I mean,
oh yeah, that's where he got his start.
You know who else I heard for Florida is that Willie Taggart. He's in his first year at Oregon, but he coached at USF before Strong, and he has great roots, obviously, to the state of Florida. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of names going out there. I saw Jeff Fisher might be going for the UCLA job.
Oh, yeah.
I guess maybe they didn't learn their lesson with going with an NFL coach.
I saw a great tweet. Jim Fisher, scratches his chin, says, can't go 8-8 if we only play 12 games.
Yeah, right.
Love that.
Yeah, that is good. 8-8 Jeff Fisher. That was him, all right. So I guess right now, really, do you have anybody else? Like Scott Frost, to me, is the pick that a lot of these schools are going to be going for. Joe Moorhead.
Yeah, I was just going to bring him up.
He might be in for some of them. Although I don't know if he'll leave for a non-Power 5 head coaching job. He might want to wait for opportunity to come about.
Why not him down at Florida State?
I guess I just can't see. I couldn't see him there though.
No,
I couldn't see. I mean, if Jimbo Fisher left Florida State, I really don't know who they would try to target. Les Miles, maybe. I don't know. You never know.
You're right. He's still out there. Hey, Bill Cowers, he's still out on the coaching market. It's an
John Gruden.
Yeah, Gruden every year.
And obviously Tennessee's trying to build that rumor up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I see that happen or not. I know that I think his kids went there, or some of his kids went to Tennessee, and he's a fan. So you never know.
Bring back Lane
He's got
Kiffin.
Is he going to land the job? What if he went to Florida State?
Why
what
not?
if Jimbo went to A&M and Lane Kiffin went to Florida State? Why
not? I mean, honestly, I'd be on board with that if I was a Seminole fan.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what do you have to lose? So
it's fun stuff, man. Fun stuff. For those of you Penn State fans still watching, we certainly appreciate it, but I think it's okay to turn your attention to the game right now. Penn State Pitt basketball. That's what I'm going to do as soon as we get off air here. So enjoy the basketball game tonight. Get ready for Maryland on Saturday. Should be a 3:30 or 3:45 kick. So Tyler,
3:30.
Make sure that you have your double screen ready. Iron Bowl and Penn State. Both very important.
Yes, and don't forget there are good games on Friday as well this week.
Oh yeah, Black Friday is always a huge day for college football.
It's just so crazy how fast the season goes. I mean,
Can
you wait
it?
all year for it, and it's just there's 12, 13 weeks. They fly by.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've had some fun along the way though. Well, not that we're saying so long
goodbye,
forever,
right.
but it's been fun, Tyler. I've really enjoyed having you, and we've had Eric Nash around along the way, Tom Trainer as well.
It has been a blast.
Great time. So we'll keep it going.
Absolutely.
Keep turning along. So for Tyler Gehlhaus, I'm Bob Long saying so long here from our Philadelphia studios, and enjoy the game. We'll be back next week to recap 12 games, a full regular season slate, and preview championship week here. And we will see you then. Enjoy your week.